Sometimes people don't miss you. They miss the way you made them feel about themselves. And that truth hurts too much to say out loud. They miss you. Bad. But they'll never say it. Not directly. Not openly. Because to admit it would mean they'd have to face the truth they've been avoiding, that your presence mattered far more than their ego was ready to admit. They'll post like they're fine, laugh a little louder, pretend they've moved on, but behind that fake confidence, they're haunted, not just by the memory of you, but by the version of them that only came alive when you were around. If you've ever felt like your absence didn't matter, that your silence went unnoticed, let me break that lie for you today. It does matter, more than you think. And by the time we're done with this message, you'll walk away not bitter, not angry, but powerful. Because today you'll understand exactly why they miss you so badly, and why their pride can't handle the truth. Hey folks, imagine this. You were once their warmth on a cold day, their calm in the chaos. Like a fireplace in a stormy cabin. You didn't make noise, but your presence made the space feel like home. You weren't flashy. You weren't performing. You were just there. Solid, grounded, real. And now that you're gone, it's like walking through that same cabin, but the fire's out. The silence is louder. The warmth is gone. They still sit there, hoping it'll just come back. But it doesn't. Because you were the fire. Not the room. Not the furniture. You. Here's the truth they won't say out loud. You were the emotional thermostat, the one who set the tone. While they were chasing distractions, you were holding space. While they sought validation, you stayed calm. While they played games, you moved with quiet purpose. And now that energy is gone, oh, they feel it every day. You see, they don't miss you the moment you walk away. No, that would be too easy. They miss you when the next person doesn't understand their silence, when the laughter doesn't feel as full, when the attention they chased leaves them feeling emptier than before. That's when your name echoes in their chest, quietly, painfully. That's when they remember who you were, what you brought, and what they'll never find again. Marcus Aurelius said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injustice." That's exactly what you've done. You didn't scream, you didn't beg, you didn't try to prove your worth. You just walked away with peace in your chest and purpose in your steps. And my friends, that kind of silence, it's not weak, it's not passive, it's legendary. They don't miss the guy who chased them. They miss the man who stopped, the man who realized that being available for chaos was costing him his peace, the man who woke up one day and chose dignity over drama, clarity over confusion, stillness over noise. And now they miss you like a song they can't replay, like a dream that fades when the alarm goes off. And that's why they can't admit it. Because to say "I miss you" would mean admitting they lost something they may never find again. So stand tall, my friend. You weren't forgotten. You were unforgettable. You didn't lose value. You simply became too expensive for their inconsistency. That's not your shame. That's your standard. And if you're feeling this, I want you to drop this in the comments right now. My silence has weight. Say it again in your mind. Let it hit. My silence has weight. And if this message is speaking to your soul, show some love. Hit that like button, subscribe, and stay with me. We're just getting started. Number 1, you stopped explaining yourself. The more you explain yourself to someone who chooses not to understand you, the more you betray your own clarity. You want to know the moment they really started missing you. It wasn't when you left. It wasn't when the texts stopped or the calls went unanswered. It wasn't even when you looked happier, calmer, more grounded in that new photo. No, the real shift happened when you stopped explaining yourself. That's the moment that shook them. Because as long as you were explaining, they still had control over your peace. But the day you chose silence over defense, dignity over desperation, that's when they felt the first real consequence of losing you. Imagine this. There's a thunderstorm outside, wild and unpredictable. Lightning splits the sky, and you're inside, trying to keep a candle lit. That candle is you, your presence, your peace, your warmth. You protect it with your hands, whisper to it, beg it to stay alive. But the windows are cracked, the wind keeps sneaking in, and no one around you even notices the effort you're putting in. One day, finally, the candle goes out. Not because you failed, but because you were never supposed to burn in a place that couldn't shelter your flame. That's what happened when you stopped explaining. You didn't go cold, you simply stopped wasting your light. And yet, there's this voice in your head, isn't there? That fear. What if they think I never cared? What if they believe their version of the story? What if I look like the villain? That fear is heavy. It creeps in late at night when your heart is open and your guard is down. It tells you that your silence might be mistaken for indifference, that unless you explain, they'll never understand what you really meant. But let me break this lie for you right now. You don't owe clarity to those who chose confusion. You don't need to hand out explanations like apologies to people who made a habit of ignoring your truth. The world tells men to speak up, to explain, to fight to be heard, especially in love. But Stoicism teaches something different. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one." You don't need to argue for your value. You live it. And that's what you did. You stopped chasing closure. You stopped trying to wrap your emotions in tidy words just to be misinterpreted again. You let your growth be your explanation. Your silence, that was your boundary. That was your evolution. What they miss now is the version of you who kept showing up with a heart wide open, trying to make them feel safe even when you felt unseen. They miss the man who stayed to explain. But that man transformed. And not with bitterness, not with anger, but with self-respect. He grew tired of being the only one trying. He learned the difference between love and self-abandonment. And in that stillness, he discovered something powerful, that peace doesn't beg to be understood, it just is. But don't think this is easy, because you do care. You're not heartless, you're not cold. You're someone who loved with depth, with intention, with vulnerability. That's what made walking away from explanations so hard. Not because you had nothing to say, but because you finally realized that saying more wouldn't change anything. They weren't listening to understand, they were listening to protect their version of the truth, and that's why they couldn't hear you. Now, your silence echoes. It asks questions they can't answer. It forces them to face the mirror without your voice softening the reflection. No more justifying, no more second drafts of your pain. You're not the guy who sends one more message just to be misunderstood again. You're the man who moved forward with clarity, without slamming the door, because you no longer needed it to shut to know you were done. Let them wonder. Let them tell whatever story helps them sleep. Your peace no longer needs to be proven. And one day, in a quiet moment when they least expect it, they'll feel it, the absence of your voice. Not just what you said, but what you stopped saying. That's when it hits the hardest, when the old pattern is broken and your energy is no longer a given. So, to every man out there listening, here's what I want you to do. Go to the comments and write this. I stopped explaining. I started evolving. Let them see it. Let yourself see it. Let the world know that your silence isn't emptiness, it's strength. That your calm isn't weakness, it's wisdom. That you don't speak to be heard anymore. You live to be felt. You're not playing the old game. You've rewritten the rules, and you're playing for peace now. Stay with me, my friends, because what's coming next? It's the moment they realize your silence wasn't just distance. It was the start of something sacred, the beginning of your unreachable peace, the very thing they'll crave, but never get again. Number 2. Your peace became unreachable. The moment they can no longer reach your peace is the moment they start questioning the chaos they chose instead. At first, they didn't notice. The silence didn't scare them. Your absence felt temporary. They thought you were just taking a breath, just giving space, just cooling off before you returned to the rhythm they'd grown used to. They assumed, like before, that a text or a vague story would pull you back in. That all it would take was one little breadcrumb to remind you where you belong. But this time, nothing happened. No reaction, no reply, no validation, just peace. And not the kind you fake to look strong, the kind that comes from real detachment. That's when it hit them. Not all at once, but slowly, painfully, like a door closing in a hallway they thought they'd always have access to. Your peace had become unreachable, and nothing unsettles someone more than realizing they can no longer disrupt the calm they used to shake with ease. See, they were used to tapping into your energy like a faucet, turn it on when they needed comfort, shut it off when it didn't serve their mood. You were the one who answered the late-night messages. You were the one who offered reassurance even when they gave you silence. You were the one who stayed emotionally available even when they couldn't decide what they wanted. You were the open door, the steady presence, the one who'd hold space even while you were falling apart inside. And then you stopped, not in bitterness, not with some dramatic exit, but with stillness, with clarity. You didn't announce the change, you became the change. Your responses slowed, then disappeared. Your online presence faded, not because you were hiding, but because you were healing. You weren't ghosting anyone. You were grounding yourself. And that shift, that quiet but undeniable shift, is what they feel now. It's not that you disappeared, it's that you elevated. And the higher you climbed in peace, the harder it became for them to reach you with chaos. Let me tell you something few people have the courage to admit. Peace is terrifying to those who thrive on instability. When you're no longer accessible to emotional games, to manipulative posts, to shallow apologies followed by the same old patterns, they don't know what to do, because for the first time, they can't find the weak spot. You've sealed it. Not with anger, but with awareness. Imagine trying to tune into a radio station that's no longer broadcasting. You twist the knob, adjust the frequency, but all you hear is static. That's what it feels like to them now. They're trying to tune back into you, but the channel is gone. And here's the part that stings. It's not gone because you cut it off. It's gone because they never honored it when it was open. They miss your calm now because the world they replaced you with is loud, exhausting, surface level. They thought detachment meant you didn't care, but now they understand. Your detachment meant you cared deeply, just not about begging to be respected. Marcus Aurelius once said, "He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe," and that's exactly what you did. You pulled back not to punish, but to realign. You stopped responding not to get even, but to get centered. You started investing your energy where it actually grows, within yourself. And that move? It was quiet, but devastatingly loud to the ones who thought they'd always have access to you. They miss your peace because it wasn't performative. It wasn't laced with conditions. It was pure, rare. And now it's gone, not to another person, but to a version of you they'll never get close to again. You didn't trade your pain for revenge. You traded it for presence, for discipline, for a soul so calm no storm can reach it. But let's be real. It wasn't easy to get here. There were nights where you almost gave in, where you stared at your phone, thumb hovering over their name, convincing yourself maybe this time would be different. There were moments you questioned your worth, not because you were unworthy, but because your value was never reflected back the way it should have been. And in those moments, what pulled you through wasn't anger, it was resolve. That voice inside that said, "I deserve better than being half-loved." They feel that now, the absence, the silence, the calm that used to anchor them. They try to poke at you with passive posts, indirect quotes, recycled "I miss you" energy disguised as "I'm fine." But it doesn't land anymore, because you've built a new foundation. And your peace, it's not a performance, it's a boundary. You didn't become unreachable to hurt them. You became unreachable because you finally understood that peace isn't found in trying to fix someone who doesn't want to be held accountable. You're not inaccessible. You're just no longer available to what drains you. And that, my friends, is a power most people never develop. But you did. So I want you to claim it. Right now. Go to the comments and write, "My peace is no longer available." Say it out loud. Let it echo. Let it remind you that the calm you found wasn't given to you. It was earned through silence, through self-reflection, through walking away when everything in you wanted to stay. Let them miss you. Let them wonder how you got so untouchable. Let the mystery of your peace speak louder than any message you could have sent. Because we're not done yet. The next part? Oh, it's the one that stings the most. It's not just that you're at peace now. It's that you didn't need them to find it. Number 3, you didn't seek closure. You created it. Closure isn't something they give you. It's something you give yourself the moment you stop begging for it. Let's rip the bandage off, my friends. Closure is a myth. It's the carrot they dangle in front of you, the final talk they promise, the conversation that's supposed to bring peace. But here's the truth. Most never say out loud. If they didn't give you clarity when you were together, what makes you think they'll give it to you when you're apart? They miss you now, not just because you're gone, but because you didn't wait for a final chapter. You wrote your own ending. You didn't sit by your phone waiting for that magical, "Hey, can we talk?" You didn't cling to the idea that someday they'd give you the explanation you deserved. You simply moved, quietly, cleanly, and that's what shook them. That's what burns. They expected you to come back one more time, to need just one last conversation, one last apology, one last try, because that's the version of you they had memorized, the one who couldn't walk away without tying up every emotional loose end. But that version, he's gone, because this time you didn't need answers to let go. You became the answer. Imagine this. You're standing in a burning house, smoke curling through the hallways, the roof groaning above your head, and instead of running out, you're holding a fire extinguisher, trying to save the photos on the wall. That's what seeking closure often looks like. We stay in the ruins, trying to make sense of the destruction, instead of walking out and choosing fresh air, even if it hurts. You didn't wait to suffocate this time. You walked out of the fire and chose to breathe again, even if you had to heal with burns still on your skin. They feel that now, that you didn't fight for the last word. You didn't chase an apology. You didn't show up to defend yourself. That silence, that wasn't weakness. That was acceptance. That was you taking your dignity back from the hands of someone who didn't know how to hold it. But it's hard, isn't it? You still think about what you would have said. You replay scenarios in your mind, crafting perfect speeches in the shower or while lying in bed. You imagine confronting them, not with anger, but with calm, cool understanding, just enough to make them finally get it. And then maybe they'd see your worth. That fantasy? It's common. We all crave resolution. The storybook ending, the moment where everything clicks and they look at you and say, "I was wrong." You were right. I never should have let you go. But let me tell you something powerful. You don't need that moment to heal. You don't need their recognition to rise. Your growth doesn't require their permission. Closure isn't something they hand to you like a trophy. It's something you claim when you stop needing it. Marcus Aurelius once said, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." Wanting closure was the obstacle. Letting go without it, that became the way. And now, you're no longer waiting in emotional purgatory. You've walked through the uncertainty and found solid ground. They miss you because you broke the cycle, because you didn't beg them to make it make sense, because you didn't return to the scene of the emotional crime just to collect pieces of yourself they still didn't value. You found those pieces on your own. You put them back together with your own hands, and now the version of you that walks forward is stronger, sharper, quieter, but more complete. That's why they can't say it out loud. That's why they keep checking your page, rereading old messages, asking around through mutual friends. Because you gave yourself something they never expected, peace that wasn't dependent on them. And now, that's exactly what they crave, but can't reach. See, closure doesn't come with perfect timing. It's not a clean cut. It's messy. It stings. It shows up in the form of silence. It shows up when you realize the conversation you thought you needed was just another excuse to stay emotionally attached. It shows up the moment you realize you've been looking backward for validation instead of forward for growth. Let them sit with that. Let them feel what it means to be shut out of your evolution. You're not cruel. You're not punishing. You're just not available for old wounds that reopen every time you knock on the same door expecting a different welcome. They'll think of you at night, not because you left a dramatic mark, but because you left without needing a scene, because you didn't demand closure. You became your own, and that kind of exit, that's rare, that's powerful, that's unforgettable. So here's what I want from you. Go to the comments right now and type this: "I created my own closure." Write it for yourself, for the version of you who once thought healing required their validation. For the man who now knows that walking away in silence doesn't mean defeat. It means arrival. Let the world see it. Let it echo into the life of every man who still waits for that one last conversation. Be the example that proves you don't need them to find peace. You just need to choose it. And stay close, my friends, because up next is the part that really stings. The moment they look in the mirror and realize you weren't just someone they knew. You were the only place they ever felt truly understood. And now that reflection is gone. Number 4. You held the mirror too long. We do not see things as they are. We see them as we are. They miss you, but not just because you were good to them, not just because you listened, stayed calm, or carried the weight they couldn't. They miss you because with you, they saw a version of themselves they actually liked. And that, my friend, is a different kind of loss. That's not just missing a person, that's missing who you became around that person. That's the kind of missing that lingers in the quiet, in the empty, in the reflection they no longer recognize. Because the truth is, you weren't just a boyfriend, a lover, a partner. You were a mirror. You held it up gently, without judgment, and reflected back the version of them they tried to bury beneath pride, confusion, and chaos. When they laughed with you, it felt real. When they opened up to you, it felt safe. And for a little while, maybe even longer than they'll admit, they got to be someone better, softer, lighter, clearer. They saw themselves through your steady eyes, and for once, they liked what they saw. But mirrors don't chase, they don't plead, they don't scream, they just stand, still and honest, showing you what is. And when someone doesn't like the reflection, they break the mirror. Not because it's wrong, but because it's too right. That's what happened with you. You didn't try to fix them. You didn't manipulate them into becoming someone they weren't ready to be. You simply showed them their highest self through your presence, through your discipline, through your calm, your patience, your integrity. And when they walked away or chose drama or silence or someone else, they didn't just leave you. They left the version of themselves that only existed in your orbit. That's what hits them now. They thought they could find it again, that the feeling they had around you wasn't about you, but about them. So they went out into the world expecting to feel the same spark, the same safety, the same effortless peace. But no matter where they go, it feels off, unstable, a little too loud, a little too fake. Because what they lost wasn't just your presence, it was who they got to be in it. You brought that out, not because you tried to, but because you lived so firmly in who you are that you naturally elevated the room around you. That's what Stoicism teaches us. To be unmoved, not out of arrogance, but out of awareness. You didn't control them. You mastered yourself. And in that mastery they found a place to exhale, a place to rest their chaos without being judged. Now they're staring at a new mirror, one that doesn't reflect softness, one that demands performance, one that makes them feel exposed instead of seen. And it hits them in the moments they least expect it, brushing their hair in the morning, laughing at a joke you would have loved, hearing a song you both shared. Not the big moments, the quiet ones. That's when the mirror returns, not as an object, but as a memory. And here's the thing, this wasn't something you forced. You didn't stand over them demanding they be better. You didn't mold them into some ideal. You simply stood in your truth, and that created space for them to meet you there. It's rare, it's powerful, and it's terrifying. Because once someone sees what that kind of presence feels like, everything else starts to feel hollow. But let's not lie. It hurts, doesn't it? Being the mirror, being the one who sees the beauty in someone before they're ready to see it themselves. Being the one who holds space for healing only to be left in the silence once they run back to what's familiar. It hurts to know you brought out the best in someone, and they still walked away. But listen to me carefully. Their inability to stay doesn't diminish your impact. It proves it. Because the truth always reveals itself in contrast. And now, everything they thought they wanted feels like noise compared to the peace they found in your presence. You weren't just a man, you were a turning point, and they'll come to see it, not in fireworks, but in flashes, quiet, unexpected, uncontrollable. They'll remember how you looked at them, not with possession, but with presence. How your silence made them feel understood. How you didn't need to raise your voice to make them feel safe. How being next to you didn't feel like pressure. It felt like peace. And when they stand in front of the mirror now, trying to find that version of themselves again, they'll realize that version only existed when you were around. That's what they miss. That's what they can't explain. That's why they stay silent. Marcus Aurelius once said, "Know first who you are, and then adorn yourself accordingly." You knew. You weren't shaken by their confusion. You didn't dim your light to match their shadows, and that's what set you apart. You didn't demand they change. You just invited them to rise, and when they couldn't, you didn't lower yourself to be understood. You walked on, quietly, completely, with grace. So here's your reminder today. You weren't too much. You weren't too calm. You weren't too still. You were a mirror, and sometimes the truth is too heavy for someone who's still trying to escape their own reflection. Drop this in the comments right now. I was the mirror, not the mistake. Say it with your chest. For every moment you questioned your impact, for every time you wondered if your presence mattered. Let the world see what you've become. Let you see it. And stay close, my friends, because what's coming next? It's when they realize, even surrounded by people, even in a crowded room, there's still no reflection like yours. Number 5, you never competed. You just were. A lion doesn't have to tell you it's a lion. It just is. They don't miss the noise. They miss the presence. They miss you. Not the man who tried to impress. Not the man who bent himself into shapes just to be chosen. No, they miss the man who never had to compete because he knew, deep down, he didn't need to. The man who walked into a room and changed the energy without saying a word. The man who stood in his truth, not because he needed to be seen, but because he wasn't afraid to be unseen. You see, that's what set you apart from the beginning. You weren't trying to prove anything. While others flashed their highlights, performed their best lines, and tried to win attention with noise, you stayed quiet. You stayed rooted. You didn't need the spotlight. Your peace was the glow. Your stillness was the signal. And in a world addicted to speed, that stillness became unforgettable. Imagine a crowded street full of vendors shouting over each other, colors, lights, deals, performances. It's chaotic, overwhelming. Everyone's trying to be louder than the next. But then there's a man, silent, calm, unmoved, sitting by a small fire just off the path. No yelling, no signs, just presence. And one by one, people start to notice him, not because he begged for it, but because he didn't. That man is you. They tried to replace you. Let's be honest. They met someone new, someone louder, someone more playful, someone who said all the right things in the first few weeks. The dopamine hit, the attention rush. It felt good for a moment. But over time, they started to notice the difference. The shallow compliments, the performance behind every joke, the overcompensation. And somewhere in between the laughs that didn't quite land and the connection that felt forced, they remembered you, the one who never tried to be better, just real. That contrast? It's starting to hit now, because they're finally beginning to understand presence can't be faked, confidence can't be performed, and emotional depth, that can't be replaced with charm. You didn't fight to be the loudest. You didn't chase attention. You didn't throw punches to win affection. You simply stood in your essence, and that essence lingered. But let's be honest, my friend, that path wasn't easy. There were moments you wondered if you were doing it wrong, if maybe you needed to talk louder, chase harder, show more. You looked at the ones who played games and seemed to win. You saw them get picked. You saw them get praise. And inside there was this voice whispering, maybe I need to become more like them. But that voice, it was fear talking. It was the part of you that hadn't yet realized that real masculinity, real power, real presence, it doesn't compete. It commands without needing control. You didn't have to scream to be heard. You didn't have to run to be valued. You didn't have to change who you were just to be seen. Epictetus said, if you want to improve, be content to be thought foolish and stupid. That's it. You were willing to be misunderstood, willing to be overlooked, willing to be passed up in a world that praises performance over presence. And now that willingness, that stillness, that quiet power is what makes you unforgettable. They feel it now, not when they're around others, but in the space after, when the lights are off, when the voices fade, when the person they're with talks too much but says too little, when laughter doesn't bring relief, when fun starts to feel like distraction instead of connection. That's when the contrast hits. That's when they remember you, not because of what you did, but because of what you didn't do. You didn't beg, you didn't chase, you didn't compete. And that energy, that non-neediness, That's what they crave now more than ever, because once someone's felt peace, once they've experienced stillness, once they've been seen by a man who isn't desperate to be validated, they can never fully settle for noise again. You became the standard, quietly, without even trying. And now they compare without wanting to. They scan every new conversation for the calm you carried. They feel anxious when someone interrupts too much. They notice the difference in tone, in presence, in pressure. It's not that the new person is bad, it's just that they're not you. So here's the truth: you never lost by not competing. You won by not lowering your frequency. You chose to be centered. And that choice made you magnetic in a way performance never could. You stopped trying to be enough for people who didn't even know how to receive your kind of energy, and instead, you became more than enough for yourself. So today, I want you to write this in the comments. I don't compete, I attract. Say it again if you have to, louder this time, because your calm is your power, your stillness is your strength, and your refusal to shrink or shout just to be seen, that's what makes you unforgettable. Let it be known, my friend, the man who doesn't compete is the one who becomes the standard everyone quietly searches for, but rarely finds. And stay tuned, because next we're going to talk about the moment they look at themselves and realize that it wasn't just you they lost. It was who they were when they were with you. Number 6, they can't reach your energy anymore. When you heal, you become hard to manipulate, and that's when they miss you the most. There was a time when all it took was a post, a lyric, a quote, a late night thinking of you, and you'd respond. Maybe not right away. Maybe you tried to play it cool, but you always felt the pull. You always answered the door, even if it was just cracked open, because a part of you still lived in that loop, that hope, that ache, but not anymore. Now they try the same tricks, the same subtle tactics, and the silence they get back is deafening, not because you're playing games, but because you're no longer playing at all. The old door they used to walk through without knocking. It's closed now, not slammed, not locked in anger, just respectfully shut. Because the man on the other side is no longer standing there waiting. He's moved. He's grown. He's gone, not physically, but emotionally, spiritually, energetically. That access they once took for granted is gone. And that realization, it stings, quietly, daily. They check. Oh, they still check. Your name in their story views, gone. Your likes, gone. The subtle engagement, the little reminders that you were still in orbit, still within reach, all gone. And in its place is silence, stillness, distance. Not the kind that creates confusion, but the kind that creates respect. Because now they don't just miss your attention, they miss the energy they used to feel when they had it. See, what they never understood was that your energy wasn't just presence. It was grounding. It was peace. It was rare. You didn't rush. You didn't overreact. You didn't need to perform. Your presence had weight, not because it was loud, but because it was real. And the world they're in now, it's filled with light shows and echo chambers, people who chase likes but can't hold conversations, people who talk too much but listen too little. And somewhere in that noise they realize something is missing. You. Not the messages, not the routine, you. The energy behind the presence, the calm behind the eyes, the way you made the moment feel still without trying. And when they try to reach you now, energetically, emotionally, they find a wall, a soft one they don't hate, but one they feel. You're no longer watching, no longer hoping, no longer leaking your spirit into a space that didn't honor it. And that shift? That's power. But let's not pretend it was easy. Detaching your energy from someone who once felt like home is a quiet war. You second-guessed yourself, wondered if silence made you the villain, asked yourself, what if they think I don't care? You wrestled with guilt, with habit, with memory, because healing doesn't come with fanfare, it comes with withdrawal. And withdrawal, it's painful until it becomes peace. That peace didn't arrive overnight. It came in layers, in long walks, in nights you didn't answer the call, in choosing not to check their stories, even when curiosity burned. It came when you started investing in your own energy, your mind, your body, your focus, and little by little, your energy stopped clinging to what drained it. Marcus Aurelius said, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And you changed the color, from chasing to choosing, from reacting to reflecting, from needing to knowing. And now the man you've become. He doesn't reach for what he's already outgrown. They miss the old version of you, the emotionally available version, the reactive version, the man who would have cracked under just a little pressure, a little bait, a little breadcrumb. But that man doesn't live here anymore, and in his place stands someone grounded, composed, unreachable, not out of spite, but out of self-mastery. They don't understand it fully, not yet, but they feel it, the shift in the air, the gap in the connection, and that gap isn't cold, it's sacred, because now you've returned your energy to where it always belonged, to you. And the truth is, when you pull back your energy, it's not about punishing anyone. It's about preserving yourself. You're no longer open to energetic trespassing. You don't respond to vague posts. You don't chase down closure. You don't validate performances, because you've realized that your energy isn't cheap. It's currency, and you don't spend it where it doesn't multiply. So let them wonder. Let them feel that pause where your presence used to be. Let them scroll and hope for a like that never comes, because they're not missing your reactions, they're missing your essence. And that's something they can't fake, replace, or recreate. So here's what I want you to do right now. Go to the comments and write this. My energy is sacred. Write it for yourself, for the man who once gave too much, for the man who has learned to guard his spirit like a temple. Let the world see it. Let you see it. Let the ones who once had access know that you're no longer giving away what should have always been earned. Because next, we're stepping into the mirror, and not the one they see, the one they used to see themselves in and can't find anymore. Stay with me. It gets deeper. Number 7. You became the standard. You become the standard the moment you stop trying to meet someone else's expectations. At first, they didn't see it. They thought you were just another chapter, a calm phase, a lesson, a moment. They didn't know you were the standard, that your presence wasn't just different, it was the bar they'd unconsciously start measuring everything else against. But now, that awareness creeps in like a quiet truth they can't outrun. Not when they laugh and it feels hollow. Not when they lie in someone else's arms and feel a strange sense of disconnect. Not when they realize that the safety they once felt was you. It doesn't hit all at once. It shows up in moments, in contrast, in the gap between attention and intention, in the silence between words. You didn't try to impress them with theatrics. You didn't flood them with compliments to win approval. You weren't playing a role, you were being. And because of that, you didn't fade when you walked away. You stayed, not physically, but energetically, emotionally, deep in the way they now experience others. You see, you weren't loud, but you were solid. You weren't trying to be unforgettable, but you were real. And in a world full of copy-paste connections, your authenticity became impossible to replace. And now that they're out there, back in the game, back in the noise, they feel it. The absence of depth, the lack of clarity, the difference between noise and peace, between effort and essence. You became the standard because you never begged to be chosen. You chose yourself. And that self-respect, that steady, masculine calm, that hits differently, especially when everyone else is performing, especially when everyone else is fighting for validation while you simply exist in your truth. You didn't talk about boundaries. You lived them. You didn't preach self-worth. You embodied it. And yes, let's be honest, it cost you at first. People misunderstood your silence, thought your stillness meant you didn't care, thought your lack of reaction was weakness, thought your peace was passive. But now, they're starting to see it for what it really was: power, restraint, growth, the discipline to not entertain what drains you, the courage to walk away without closure, the wisdom to choose solitude over chaos. You weren't cold, you were collected. Now they're realizing that you weren't hard to love, you were just hard to manipulate. And once someone experiences that kind of clarity, that kind of presence, that kind of consistency, they don't forget it. They can't, because everything that comes after starts to feel slightly off, slightly noisy, slightly performative, and they can't stop comparing, not because they want to, but because the energy doesn't lie. They try to recreate the feeling, but it doesn't land the same. They meet people who talk big, who make grand gestures, who seem impressive on paper, but the emotional core, it's missing. There's no anchor, no gravity, no grounded presence to make them feel safe. And that's when they finally see it clearly. You weren't just a good man. You were a mirror, a mentor, a storm of calm wrapped in quiet strength. The rare kind, the unteachable kind. And maybe they don't say it out loud. Maybe their pride still builds a wall between the truth and their voice. But deep down, in the quiet moments, the ones they never post about, they know. You were the one they should have appreciated. You were the one who brought peace without asking. You were the one who raised the bar without trying. But that's not even the point. Because this isn't about their regret, it's about your rise. It's about the man you became because of what you refused to keep entertaining. It's about how you stopped looking for peace in people and started building it inside yourself. You became the standard, not because they missed you, but because you stopped missing yourself. Stoicism teaches us to measure our lives by internal truth, not external approval. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The happiness of your life depends upon the quality of your thoughts." And you changed your thoughts, you changed your story, you changed the way you show up for you. You no longer live to be understood, you live to be aligned. So what now? Now you continue, not to prove anything, not to punish anyone, but because your future demands it. You protect your peace not as a reaction, but as a practice. You guard your energy not out of fear, but out of wisdom, and you let them miss you, not because you need that validation, but because you finally understood this truth. The rare ones don't chase attention. They attract reflection. You became the man who doesn't just speak about respect, he lives it. You became the man who raises the standard, not by demanding others rise, but by refusing to fall. You became the man who walks into rooms without needing to be noticed, because his energy does all the talking. So now I want to hear from you. Right now, go to the comments and write this. I am the standard. Say it, mean it, show them, show yourself. Show the world around you that you are no longer trying to be enough for people who never knew how to measure value in silence, in presence, in calm. And if this message hit your soul, you already know what to do. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this with a brother who needs to hear it. Let this community grow. Let this message echo. Let the world know that we're not chasing, we're building. We're not explaining, we're evolving. We're not competing, we're becoming. Until next time, stay grounded, stay sharp, and protect your peace.